Once the squints were allowed out of the Firefly to begin the survey, Jules had little to do but monitor the sensors and keep a vigil for any changes in the environment. Even if the visual provided them with an idyllic view of their landing site, the planet was teeming with life, and the probabilities of danger were high. Their sensors were sophisticated enough to register life, but they had little to no idea of how that life would manifest. For all they knew, everything here could be toxic to them, or the indigenous fauna too hostile for a colony to be established. It didn't matter, she told herself upon leaving the hopper in search of the Major. Humanity didn't have the luxury of being picky. This was the only planet capable of sustaining them, and they simply did not have the resources to search for another. As she stepped out into the open and glanced at the sky, the odd green-tinged colors still struck her. It was beautiful, but so very alien. Using her slate, she traced Tom's location using his personal data implant. In the past, such devices fell squarely within the crosshairs of civil liberties groups screaming privacy violations. The idea of tracing the movement of billions was invasive to say the least, but it was standard issue for all military personnel, now they were a spacefaring species. It made it easier to recover bodies. Making sure she did not venture into the tree line, Jules skirted the great forest that awaited exploration once their preliminary surveys were complete. The heat was delicious, even if she felt beads of sweat beneath her flight suit. After breathing nothing but circulated air at a maddeningly constant temperature for the last 6 months, she was happy to put up with the unpredictability of a natural climate. The air bore the fragrance of pollen and sap, with small insects buzzing about, oblivious to the new arrivals in their ecosystem. Chirps and trills peppered the air, and Jules swiveled her neck each time to catch a glimpse of the animal or bird it came from. Along the way, she spied the squints hard at work. They were conducting a battery of tests on the environment, taking air, water, and mineral samples, collecting specimens of plant and insect life. Whatever their duty, she saw the delight at being in the open air on all their faces. The sharks, despite being more jaded and cautious, were similarly enamored, and a strange sort of camaraderie had formed between the two very different camps. She found the Major on the banks of the unnamed river, playing escort to another group of squints. Carrying a gun, more like a miniature cannon, she thought. It appeared he wasn't above guard duty like the rest of his squad. She watched him admiring the scenery, taking in the beauty of it all. Beneath the clear water, there were bushes of aquatic plants of deep red, yellow, and amber. The result was a river painted in colors that took the breath away. Oh, wow. At that, Tom glanced over his shoulder to see Jules's awed expression as she gaped at the river. Her expression made him smile inwardly. Bloody amazing, isn't it? It is, she nodded in agreement, her eyes drinking in the visual feast of alien colors. The squints are taking water samples. He gestured further up the bank where Hanai was ankle-deep in water collecting samples in little test tubes with her assistant, Mahmoud, a kid who was 25 but looked 17. Worse yet, to avoid being mistaken for a teenager, Mahmoud wore a beard that covered half his face and a man bun that made Tom Merrick want to belt him on sheer principle. I've given up telling him to be careful. I'll just shoot the thing that bites off their legs. Tom hollered loud enough for them to hear. Hanai's response was a tongue stuck out in his direction. Jules stifled a smirk, admiring the balls on the Japanese scientist who knew perfectly well she could take such liberties with the shark major due to her civilian status. Still, judging by the faint smile on his face, it was clear he wasn't taking any offense either. Like the rest of the expedition, Tom Merrick's spirits were buoyant, just being out in the open. Think of it this way, Jules shrugged. There's no sight of Godzilla yet. He uttered a short laugh, and Jules found herself studying him closely for a moment. He could never be considered beautiful, but he was ruggedly handsome and personified alpha male. Aside from the accent and the ripped physique, the man oozed bad boy in every conceivable way. As her mommy would say, that kind of boy is no good for anything but trouble.